The golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated, is common to most religions and cultures of the world. The idea is global. It's all over. Most religions, most cultures of the world, many different thinkers, believers, non-believers. It's important in families and professions. And a whole lot of people have given it as the summary of how to live, including Jesus, Hillel, Confucius, and lots more. And today it's part of a growing interfaith global ethics movement. I became a golden rule junkie in 1968 after hearing a talk by the Oxford philosopher R.M. Hare. And I went on to do lots of things involving the golden rule, including a master's thesis, a doctoral dissertation, many talks, papers, parts of many books. And my latest book, which is number 13, is totally on the golden rule. And it has two introductions. One is technical and analytic, and the other is simpler and uses stories. And I thought I'd pick out some pieces from the one with stories because it's maybe a little more entertaining. But they make kind of the same points, too. My first story is called The Old Man and His Grandson. And Westerners think of it as coming from the Brothers Grimm, who about 200 years ago gathered traditional European folk stories together. However, it's really more global than that. It's part of many different cultures. The earliest version of the story that I've been able to find goes back to ancient India and is Buddhist. There once was a grandpa who lived with his family. And as Grandpa got older, he began to spill and slobber his food. And the family was grossed out. And they said, "You're going to eat at a table by yourself." And the old man, at times his hand would shake, and he dropped his dish on the floor and it broke. And the family went ballistic. They yelled and screamed at him, and they bought him a cheap wooden bowl to eat instead. So this food would get all slobbered together in this bowl, and he would eat by himself. Grandpa was so unhappy. Now one day, the young grandson was working with wood, and the parents asked, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm making a wooden bowl." And they asked, "Why? Why are you making a wooden bowl?" And he said, "Well, for you two to use, Mom and Dad, when you two get old and have to eat at a table by yourselves." And that hit them really hard. And they realized how they were mistreating Grandpa because they imagined the same thing being done to them. And they decided to change. And henceforth, Grandpa would eat with the family. And if he sometimes slobbered a little bit, no big deal. The heart of the golden rule is switching places. What you do to Grandpa or to someone else, you imagine being done to yourself. And you ask, am I willing that if I were in that situation, I would be treated that way? The golden rule seems simple, but the usual wording can give strange results. So many academics reject the golden rule as vague and riddled with difficulties, and really not a very good idea. This is a little stupid folk principle that leads to absurdities once you begin to analyze it. So it's mostly ignored by philosophers and theologians, and in an intro course about ethics and philosophy or theology, you might not even hear it. Or if you do, it perhaps is dismissed very quickly. I think this might be a good test if you're hiring someone in the philosophy department of their philosophical ability. Give them 30 seconds to refute the literal golden rule. Now, I think it's a good principle, but it needs a little bit more finessing. You need to be a little bit more careful about the wording. And so I put an improved wording. Whoa. Just got to catch the focus. Okay, let's see how this works here. Now it works. Okay, I put an improved wording on my T-shirt, and it says, treat others only as you consent to being treated in the same situation. There's a lot of subtlety in that wording, and some of that will come out a bit. The golden rule, as I see it, is a consistency principle. Doesn't tell you exactly what to do. It doesn't distinguish right from wrong. It doesn't replace ordinary moral principles, or it doesn't replace other ethical theories. It more supplements. It gives a tool of consistency that is, however, very useful. You violate the golden rule if you combine two things. If you do something to another, and yet at the same time you're unwilling that this be done to you in the same situation. The golden rule, far from being a vague platitude, is a precise consistency requirement. You're thinking of doing something to another person, like Grandpa. Imagine the same thing being done to you in the same circumstances. If you condemn the action done to you, you're condemning yourself. Switching places is a golden idea that's global and beautifully simple. It promotes justice, consideration, and cooperation. But alas, there are ways to screw up the reasoning. And I call these golden rule fallacies, and I'm going to mention 5 of them. The first one is the most important one. The literal golden rule fallacy assumes that everyone has the same likes, dislikes, and needs that we have. And here are my, these all have little stories. And the first little story is called The Monkey and the Fish, and it comes from Africa. There once lived a monkey and a fish. And the monkey was a golden rule monkey, always wanting to treat others as he wanted to be treated, but he applied this pretty foolishly. Now, one day, a big storm came to his island, and the rainwaters came and the floodwaters rose, and the monkey was afraid for his life. And so he saw a tree with a high branch, and he went to it, and he reached up to the high branch and lifted himself out of the water to safety. But then he looked down, and he saw a fish struggling in the water. And because he cared about the fish, he reached down and grabbed the fish out of the water and lifted him to safety on a high branch. And of course, that didn't work. The fish died. He applied the golden rule too literally. Treat others as you want to be treated. Well, he wanted to be lifted out of the water himself. Well, then you should lift the fish out of the water. That's what the literal golden rule would say. But he didn't bear in mind how monkeys and fish differ. If you take a monkey out of the water, it saves it. If you take a fish out of the water, it kills it. Another example of why not to take the golden rule too literally. Suppose that I'm a waiter at a restaurant and I hate broccoli, which I do. Yuck. I hope we don't have any for the snacks. And suppose that Becky comes in as a customer and she loves broccoli. You like broccoli? Yeah, okay. Becky comes in and she orders broccoli. Should I serve her broccoli? Not by the literal golden rule. I don't want people to serve me broccoli, so I shouldn't serve her broccoli. She'd be mad, and I'd probably get fired. But again, the literal golden rule. If you don't want people to serve you broccoli, don't serve them broccoli. Against the literal golden rule, it can be wrong to treat others in their situation, which may be different from mine, as I want to be treated in my situation. Maybe the situation's different. Maybe we have different likes and dislikes and needs. So a lot of people have complained that the golden rule is really simplistic. It assumes that we all have the same likes and dislikes and needs, and how I want to be treated in my situation is how I should treat someone in another situation. How dumb is the golden rule? Or maybe it just needs a qualifier. Maybe it just needs a same situation qualifier, as indeed has been the standard move since the early 1600s. People are experts on the golden rule. Now, fortunately for us, the island with the foolish monkey also had a wise monkey. Now, Kita was a wise golden rule monkey, and she learned how monkeys and fish differ. And when the storm came and she saw the other monkey taking the fish out of the water, she was tempted to do this herself. But then she thought of how this action would affect the fish. It would kill it. And she imagined herself in the exact place of the fish. And she asked a more sophisticated question. Am I now willing that if I were in the same situation as the fish, then I be taken from the water? Note the same situation. Am I willing that if I were in the same situation as the fish, then I'd be taken out of the water? And she said, gosh, no, this would kill me. And so she didn't take it out of the water. So treat others only as you're willing to be treated in the same situation. Probably the most important point about the golden, although there's others too. Going back to the broccoli example. Again, I'm a waiter in a restaurant, and Becky orders broccoli. You want broccoli. Now, the right way to ask it is, am I now willing that if I were in the same situation as Becky, who actually likes this stuff, that I be given broccoli? And yeah, sure. There's no problem. The same situation clause is a great help. Now, by a marvelous coincidence, Kita is, besides being the name of a golden rule monkey, is also an acronym for using the golden rule wisely. Kita stands for Know, Imagine, Test, Act. My suggestion on some of the more important parts of applying the golden rule. First of all, you have to know, how would my action affect others? So I'm going to take the fish out of the water. How would my action affect the fish? And the fish might be different from me in some ways, maybe have different needs, maybe have different likes and dislikes. So I got to imagine myself in the place. Well, that's the second one. You know how it affects the other person or fish, and then you imagine, what would it be like to have this done to me in the same situation? And then you test for consistency by asking the golden rule question. Am I now willing that if I were in the same situation, then this be done to me? And if not, and you act this way toward the other, you're violating consistency. And finally, you got to act toward others only as you're willing to be treated in the same situation. The most subtle part of this is the question. Am I now willing that if I were in the same situation, then this would be done to me? Remember, willing that if. This is almost always screwed up by people. Now, my favorite historical example of the Kita procedure is a civil rights speech by President Kennedy, years before many of you were born. It was a speech against segregation on the occasion of the first black enrollment at the University of Alabama. And even though Kennedy was totally ignorant of golden rule monkeys. Still, his speech pretty much followed this pattern. Know, imagine, test, act. First of all, he tried to get white Americans to know how they were treating black Americans as second-class citizens, and as in terms of job opportunities, in terms of educational opportunities. They couldn't go to the University of Alabama, in terms of not being able to vote, and so on. He went quite detailed. You know, how are we treating others? And then he encouraged imagination or role reversal. Imagine that you are treated as a second-class citizen in this way for your skin color. And then the test question, he asked whether they would be content to being treated that way in the same situation, and he thought that they wouldn't be. So he challenged them to act on the golden rule. And in terms of actions, in terms of change of heart, in terms of civil rights laws, and he summed up his speech. Oh, I get two microphones this way.
The heart of the question is whether all Americans are to be afforded equal rights and equal opportunities, whether we are going to treat our fellow Americans as we want to be treated.
The heart of the question. And I would say that the heart of morality is the golden rule. Actually, I'd say the heart of morality is the golden rule. And the heart of the golden rule is switching places. What you do to someone else, grandpa, maybe someone of a different race, maybe someone that your culture has encouraged you to mistreat, maybe gay people, maybe people of another religion. What you do to another, you imagine it being done to you. You switch places in your mind. And to avoid the literal golden rule fallacy, you can imagine yourself in the exact place of the other person, having the other person's likes and dislikes and needs and so forth.